Noragami Season 1 begins by showing a female middle school student named Hiyori, who looks sad and scared because her classmates are constantly bullying her and talking about her from behind. Those negative thoughts or emotions come from supernatural beings called ayakashi. Ayakashi can influence the hearts and minds of humans to do evil and despicable deeds. Ayakashi is even able to encourage humans to hurt others or hurt themselves. Hiyori, who already felt that she could not stand all the hatred from her friends, decided to pray to the gods to help her. Hiyori's request was heard by a male god named Yato. Yato is a god who still doesn't have many followers and doesn't yet have his own shrine. That's why Yato was willing to grant a human's wish for only 5 yen. After that, Yato immediately started a fight against the giant Ayakashi who was bothering Hiyori. Yato summons the Holy Spirit or Shinki from a girl who is currently his weapon, Tomone, to fight against the Ayakashi. Shinki is a holy spirit from a human who has died and entered into a contract with a god to be used as a weapon to kill the demons. The more followers a god has, the more prosperous he will be and the more Shinki he will have. While Yato is a very poor god and has no followers at all. That's why, that day Tomone ended their contract and chose to leave him. Tomone feels very frustrated with their very sad life and lives like a homeless person. Seeing that, Yato had no other choice but to let go of her and terminate the contract. After Yato released Tomone, now Yato had no holy weapons at all. That means, Yato can't work as a god anymore and can't kill demons. Yato, who was desperate, finally put his phone number at various points in public places so that people could contact him when they needed his services. While contemplating on a park bench, Yato gets a call from a client who asks Yato to help find a cat. When Yato saw the cat in the middle of the highway, Yato immediately chased after it so he could catch it. Without realizing, Yato ran in the middle of the highway that would be passed by a very fast speeding bus. Suddenly, Yato was pushed by a girl from behind so that he could survive the collision. Unfortunately, that night's action resulted in the girl having an accident and her spirit being separated from her body. The girl looked surprised when she saw many people standing around her dying body. From the start, Yato seemed relaxed walking in the middle of the highway because he knew that he would not die just because he was hit by a vehicle. But Yato did not expect that there would be a human who could see him. A few days later, Hiyori finally recovered and regained consciousness. Since that incident, Hiyori began to be able to see and hear the sounds of supernatural beings around her. In addition, Hiyori also suddenly felt weak and sleepy. While coming home from school, Hiyori coincidentally saw a brochure which contained a photo of the cat that Yato chased a few days ago. Hiyori decides to find the cat so she can find Yato. On the other hand, Yato had managed to find the cat in an alley. But suddenly, an Ayakashi in the form of a large frog appeared and attacked him. Yato seems to have a hard time defeating Ayakashi because he still hasn't found a new holy spirit to use as his holy weapon. But coincidentally, Hiyori appeared and immediately invited Yato to run away from that place. After successfully escaping from the Ayakashi, Yato pointed at the tail on Hiyori's body and said that Hiyori's spirit had separated from her body. Hiyori looked shocked that her spirit had yet again come out of her original body. Yato then explains that currently, Hiyori has been trapped in 2 realms, namely the human realm and the spirit realm, so Hiyori is a half-human Ayakashi. Hearing this, Hiyori approached Yato and asked him to help her. Yato also agreed to help Hiyori on the condition that she had to pay him 5 yen. Several days after the events of that night, Hiyori still hadn't recovered. She often falls unconscious because her spirit suddenly leaves her body. Realizing that she still hasn't recovered, Hiyori immediately goes to see Yato and asks him to help her overcome the problem. Yato then explains to Hiyori that at this time, he still can't use his full abilities because he still hasn't found a holy spirit to be used as a Shinki. Hearing this explanation, Hiyori decided to find a Shinki for Yato so that he could help her. Hiyori then goes around the city in search of the spirits who are willing to become Shinki for Yato. After successfully finding the Shinki, Hiyori immediately brought it to him. Yato, who saw the giant Ayakashi carried by Hiyori, immediately invited Hiyori to run away from that place. It turns out that the spirit brought by Hiyori is not a holy spirit but Ayakashi or an ordinary demon. Yato also warns Hiyori to be careful with the tail in her spirit because the tail is the link between Hiyori's soul and body. That means if the tail is severed, then Hiyori's soul will forever be separated from her body and she will die. On his way to escape from the giant Ayakashi, Yato came across a holy spirit that was young and green in color. Yato then entered into a contract with the spirit and made the spirit his Shinki. After the Shinki transformed into a sword, Yato immediately slashed the giant Ayakashi. After the fight was over, the Shinki transformed into a teenage boy, and Yato gave him the name Yukine. The next day, Yato and Yukine ask Hiyori to treat them to food because Yato still has no money. After lunch, Yato received a call from a client, and he immediately invited Yukine to teleport to that location. But accidentally, Hiyori's spirit was also carried away with Yato and Yukine. On that day, Yato got a call from a god of learning named Tenjin-sama. Yato looked jealous of Tenjin-sama, who Yukine and Hiyori admired. He is a very prosperous god, because there are many people who make wishes to him. He also has a lot of shinki from young girls. It turns out that one of Tenjin-sama's shinki is Tomone, Yato's former shinki. His goal of contacting Yato is for Yato to kill an ayakashi who lately often influences students to end his life on a railroad track. Tenjin-sama then asked Tomone to accompany Yato to the scene. At first, Yato didn't want to do the mission because he thought people who wanted to end their own lives had been influenced by ayakashi, and there was no point in helping people like that. But after seeing Hiyori, who seemed sincere in wanting to save the students, Yato finally decided to accept the job and immediately slaughtered the giant ayakashi. Yato then explained that the biggest reason he completed this mission was because he didn't want the shinki to witness another human take his own life. Shinki are human spirits who die without their will, so allowing other humans to end their lives in front of human spirits who actually still have the will to live is something very cruel. The next day, Yato invites Hiyori and Yukine to go to an acquaintance's house. Yato has a friend named Kofuku who is a god just like Yato. There is also a grizzled middle-aged man named Daifoku. Kofuku has such a bright personality that she can easily get along with Hiyori and Yukine. After that, Kofuku had time to tell Hiyori and Yukine that although currently Yato's appearance was very poor and pathetic, in fact, Yato was once a very terrible god. Kofuku then explained that in the past Yato had killed several shinki and humans, because from the start, Yato was actually a war god created from the evil wishes of humans. Daifoku then pacifies Hiyori by saying that Yato's dark days are over. That night when Hiyori came home from Kofuku's place, Hiyori accidentally met Yato. Hiyori then asked Yato what was the reason he brought her to Kofuku and Daifoku's place. Yato then put his arm around Hiyori and said that he purposely brought her there so that if one day something bad happened, she could come to that place. On the other hand, Yukine, who was sitting alone by the lake, was suddenly approached by the spirit of a little girl named Nora. Yato, who saw this, immediately warned Nora and asked why she came to that place. It turns out that Nora used to be Yato's shinki, but Nora has betrayed Yato. Since Yukine met Nora, Yukine's personality slowly began to change. It seemed that Yukine felt left out because Nora suddenly appeared and approached Yato again. Yukine began to doubt and wonder if he could really become a useful shinki for Yato. Although actually, Yukine shouldn't be afraid of Nora's presence because Nora is a shinki who works for more than one god. That means, Nora is a shinki who is disloyal and betrays many gods so that many shinki hate her. In the following days, Yukine becomes rebellious to Yato and dares to do despicable things or sin. Yet, every time a shinki commits a disgraceful act, the god connected to the shinki will feel excruciating pain. Yato then explains to Hiyori that previously, shinki was a human, and every human would have sinned. That sin will turn into a pain that makes the gods understand what is good and what is bad. In addition, Yato also explained that gods are not bound by the law of right and wrong. That's why gods are allowed to kill humans or shinki as a form of punishment for their sins. Upon hearing that, Hiyori immediately rushed to look for Yukine. On the other hand, Yukine was running because he was afraid of the dark and was trying to find a place that made him feel safe. On the way, Yukine met the spirit of a little girl who was crying alone on the side of the road. It seemed that the girl had died in a car accident a few days ago and still didn't realize that she was dead. Yukine then decided to accompany the little girl's spirit under the garden lights. When the little girl heard from Yukine that her mother would never come, the little girl immediately felt empty and her mind was influenced by the evil ayakashi. Even the little girl started to form into half ayakashi and started attacking Yukine. Fortunately, Hiyori and Yato arrived just in time and immediately rescued him. Since that night, Yukine has felt guilty because he thought that the little girl turned into ayakashi because of him. His emotional state became increasingly unstable, and he became more and more rebellious. That day, Yukine stole a skateboard from a shop and played with it. But suddenly, Yato came and took the skateboard from Yukine. Yato then asked Yukine where he got the skateboard from. Yukine replies that he got the skateboard from Hiyori, who had given it to a shop. After Yato asked Hiyori that, Hiyori also said that she was the one who had given the skateboard to Yukine. Apparently, Hiyori purposely lied to Yato so that he wouldn't punish Yukine. In the middle of the conversation, suddenly a war goddess named Bishamon appeared and immediately attacked Yato. It turns out that in the past, Yato had killed Bishamon's shinki. Until now, Bishamon wants to take revenge on Yato by killing Yato and also his shinki. Yato immediately summoned Yukine and started fighting Bishamon. Meanwhile, Hiyori remembered Yato's message to ask Kofuku and Daifuku for help, so she immediately ran toward their house. After arriving, Hiyori, feeling very panicked, tried to persuade Kofuku to be willing to help Yato defeat Bishamon. Seeing Hiyori's sincerity, Kofuku immediately prepared to help Yato with her Shinki. On the other hand, Yato doesn't seem to be able to keep up with Bishamon's strength and can only dodge her attacks. Yato is in a very weak condition because the sins made by Yukine have left many wounds on his body. When Yato and Yukine hide in the middle of the forest, Bishamon manages to find them, so they are forced to face her. Fortunately, Kofuku arrived just in time and immediately stopped their fight by creating a wind hole. However, it actually makes the demons from hell come. Seeing the increasingly dangerous situation, Kazuma, as the Shinki of Bishamon, requested that they postpone this fight. After Bishamon left, the storm that brought demons from hell made Yato's condition even worse. Yato started to wonder if his decision to adopt Yukine as his Shinki was the right one. On the next day, Yukine, who was unable to contain his emotions, finally started throwing a tantrum and causing chaos in a school. This action made Yato even more painful, and an evil curse began to spread in Yato's body. Hiyori, who saw this, immediately carried Yato to Kofuku and Daifuku's house. Hiyori also scolds Yukine and forces him to come with her to Kofuku's house. But when they got there, Daifuku immediately made a sacred line so they couldn't enter. This is because the curse experienced by Yato is very severe and very difficult to cure. Hiyori kept begging Kofuku and Daifuku for them to save Yato while crying. After seeing Hiyori's despair, Daifuku finally lets Hiyori in and begins to think of ways to save Yato. After that, she immediately helped clean Yato's curse. Kofuku then explained that the only way to save Yato was by performing a purification ceremony, a ritual performed by punishing Shinki so that the curse from Yato's body disappeared. This ritual can only be done by Shinki, because only human spirits can judge the sins of other spirits. Kofuku also explained that this ritual can only be done if there are at least 3 Shinki who are willing to perform the ritual. Therefore, Kofuku immediately rushed to look for the other 2 Shinki. Fortunately, Tomone is willing to help Yato to undergo the purification ritual, but they are still having trouble finding the 3rd Shinki. Then Hiyori remembers Bishamon's Shinki, Kazuma, who respects Yato very much. Fortunately, Kazuma is willing to help Yato because Kazuma said that he was once indebted to him. Kazuma, who saw Yato in pain, immediately asked him to remove Yukine's name from his body. But Yato refused and chose to keep Yukine as his Shinki. Seeing this, Daifuku immediately led a purification ceremony to cleanse Yukine's sins. It turns out that Yukine has been influenced by the many evil ayakashi that have been attached to his body. Daifuku, Tomone, and Kazuma made a dividing triangle and tortured Yukine. The torment would last until Yukine confessed all his sins. Seeing Yukine still not willing to admit his sins, Hiyori shouted and said that Yato was a god who was willing to defend Yukine even though he had committed many sins and made Yato feel pain. Hearing that, Yukine came to his senses and began to admit all his mistakes. After that, Ayakashi, who was attached to Yukine's body, disappeared, and the purification ritual succeeded in saving Yato. A few days after the incident, Yato went to see Tenjin-sama to find out how to help Hiyori, whose spirit was constantly leaving her own body. Yato felt that he owed Hiyori so much that he wanted to help her as an expression of his gratitude. Tenjin-sama suggested that Yato break the bond between himself and Hiyori, but Yato still can't do that. On New Year's Eve, Yato invites Hiyori to meet at a shrine belonging to Yashima Tenjin. After that, Hiyori saw someone who looked a lot like Yato and immediately followed him. Unfortunately, it's all just a trap set up by Nora so she can cut off Hiyori's tail. On the other hand, Yato, who was walking towards the Tenjin temple, suddenly received an emergency call from a client who asked him to kill a giant centipede demon. It turns out that it was part of Nora's plan that had conspired with her master named Rabo so that they could separate Yato and Hiyori. Rabo also purposely sent a lot of Ayakashi so he could see Yato's current abilities. Several decades ago, Rabo and Yato were actually gods of war who worked together to kill the Ayakashi, but Rabo began to change and chose to kill humans or Shinki according to the evil wishes of other humans. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Hiyori almost died because Nora's stray dogs began to surround her and intended to cut off her tail. Luckily, the sun was starting to rise, and the whole dog was burned by the sun and Hiyori was able to survive the attack. The next day, Hiyori meets Yato and Yukine again. Surprisingly, Hiyori couldn't recognize Yato and didn't remember anything about him. It turns out that after Hiyori met Nora, Hiyori started to lose all memories of Yato. Hiyori could still remember Yukine and the others, but the only person she couldn't remember was Yato. Yato, who feels annoyed, tries to do everything possible to bring Hiyori's memories back, including drawing all the memories from when they were still together. A few days later, Yato finally finds out that the one who had retrieved the memories of him from Hiyori's mind was Nora. Yato also begins to realize that Nora has teamed up with Rabo to turn Yato back into a cold and heartless god of disaster. Yato has no other choice but to fight Rabo and Nora so he can save Hiyori's memories. When Yato and Yukine said goodbye to Hiyori before fighting Rabo, Hiyori's spirit was accidentally carried away with them. Yato panicked because Hiyori's spirit suddenly entered Rabo's temple, and it was very dangerous for her. Shortly after, the fight between Rabo and Yato began to take place. Yato's power was still not fully recovered, and it made Rabo feel very annoyed. Rabo then intends to kill Hiyori because he thinks that Hiyori is the cause of Yato being weak. Fortunately, Yato managed to withstand the attack and immediately asked Yukine to take Hiyori away from there. When Yukine and Hiyori are about to leave, Rabo destroys Hiyori's memory ball, causing her to fall unconscious. This made Yato's anger peak, and finally, Yato began to brutally attack Rabo just like when he was a disaster god. The battle was fierce and epic. In the middle of the fight, the stone ruins almost fell on Hiyori, so Yato quickly hugged Hiyori and protected her. That's when she started to remember Yato because she recalled the scent from his body. After that, Yato immediately slashed Rabo's body and killed him instantly. After the fight is over, Yato suggests to Hiyori that she break her ties with him so that Hiyori can live a happier life. However, Hiyori firmly refused because she wanted to continue to live with Yato. Hearing that, Yato felt embarrassed as he extended his hand to Hiyori. Yato then says that Hiyori will have to pay 5 yen to make her wish come true. Hiyori then happily paid 5 yen to Yato, and now Yato and Hiyori and the others can continue to live side by side and take care of each other. This anime teaches us to be able to live by continuously considering what actions are considered bad or good, so that we do not harm others and do not accumulate sin.